Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our founding father, George Washington, was universally respected, regardless of party or faction. His success in uniting our country and uniting a disparate people during the tumult of our revolution was nothing short of miraculous.
Representative, please suspend just for a second. Members, we've certainly given each of our colleagues the opportunity to be heard today. I know we're on our last resolution. I would appreciate if everybody could please take their seats. Any conversations be taken to the anterooms outside of the chamber. If members could please take their seats. Any conversations, please take them to the chamber, the anterooms outside the chamber. Representative Saccone, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I said, his success in uniting a disparate people during the tumult of our revolution was nothing short of a miracle. And he continuously appealed to God for favor in our struggle for independence. Many of our founding fathers did the same. And as many of our founding fathers look down upon us right here today from that grand apotheosis, it might pay to remind ourselves that our very Constitution reflects that sentiment. Because you won't get past even the very first line of our Pennsylvania Constitution, and you'll hear, "We, the people of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, grateful to Almighty God for his blessings of civil and religious liberty, and humbly invoking his guidance, do hereby ordain and establish this Constitution." Did you hear what I said? Our founding fathers humbly invoked God's guidance when they wrote our Constitution. I think we could also benefit from some of that today. The appeal to heaven flag was used by George Washington and represented the colonists' trust in God. We've hung a bunch of them in the lower rotunda today. You'll see them all around. I hope you'll stop by and see them. I have some smaller ones for your desks if you'd like one. It was flown frequently prior to and during the Revolution. How fitting that we celebrate it today in this resolution as we celebrate the year of our 60th anniversary of our national motto, "In God We Trust," which was conceived and birthed right here in Pennsylvania. Mr. Speaker, I'll close with this to show the sentiment and the heart of our first president, George Washington, because he left us a really great message, I think. The day the Bill of Rights was passed, in 25 September 1789, the men who wrote the Bill of Rights, you know the Bill of Rights has 10 amendments, and of course you know the First Amendment has 5 freedoms, and the first of those freedoms is freedom of religion. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, nor prohibiting the free exercise thereof. The men who wrote that came in on September 25th to pass it. And they passed it, and they sent it over to the Senate, and the Senate sent it off to George Washington. And the very next thing they did was, can you imagine what it was? The very next thing they did, they passed the resolution thanking Almighty God for helping them write it. And they sent that over to the Senate. And the Senate sent it over to George Washington. And George Washington wrote a very nice, flowery letter, our first national day of prayer and thanksgiving. You could look it up. It's beautifully written. I have a copy of it in my office if anybody wants to see it. But it's very long and flowery. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. But the very first line, I think, tells us the sentiment of his heart. And that message that he left us, I think, is important for us to remember today. That first line of that first national day of prayer and thanksgiving, which he wrote on October 5th, 1789, says this: "It is the duty, not an option, it is the duty of all nations to acknowledge the providence of Almighty God, to obey his will, and humbly implore his protection and guidance." Did you hear what GW said, folks? He told us to obey God's will. Our first president, our government, told us to obey God's will. Don't you think we could benefit from more of that sentiment today? So I close with saying, happy birthday, Mr. President. Thank you for the legacy, the godly heritage that you left us. God bless this Commonwealth, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.